So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Celia Pagliano. I work at BPI France to help startups develop abroad. Heidi BERGMAN from Neste and Elna ROSIN from the French-Norwegian Chamber of Commerce will be joining us today to discuss the expectations in terms of innovation along the hydrogen value chain. Before I leave the floor to Elna, I would like to kindly request that you please wait till the end of the presentation to ask your questions. Elna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Celia. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Elna ROSIN. I represent today the French-Norwegian Chamber of Commerce. Let me just see if we can... Perfect. Right. So we are a bilateral members organization based in Oslo, Norway. We have offices in Paris as well. So we are really working both ways between France and Norway. We have in our network some of the largest corporations in both countries, small and medium-sized companies as well. And the idea is really to sort of make connections between the industry world, the public and the private sector. And we work a lot with the energy sector, and in particular with hydrogen, where we have identified a lot of opportunities for economic and industrial cooperation between France and Norway. There's a lot of complementarity between both countries. France having stated its very ambitious objectives in terms of hydrogen development, Norway being an energy nation and in many ways leading countries in terms of green technology and green mobility. So that's one of the sectors where we've been doing a lot of events, of projects. We're actually going to prepare a business trip for French companies together with BP France in Norway next year on the hydrogen topic. And just to mention that we're part of Team France Export, so working closely with Business France to help French companies finding partners in Norway. And we're doing the same thing on the opposite side as well, together with Innovation Norway.
Thank you, Elna. Heidi, would you like to introduce yourself? Yeah?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heidi BERGMAN. I represent Neste Innovations and our renewable hydrogen business platform. It is my great pleasure to talk about renewable hydrogen and clean hydrogen perspectives in this event today. Neste, it's about being the leading sustainable products and circular solutions company globally. Our purpose, you can see here, it's about creating a healthier planet for our children. We refine residues, waste and innovative raw materials into sustainable fuels and aviation fuels. Today we're all together some 5,000 professionals, and we are very, very proud that 25% of us work with innovations and new technologies. We have our refineries in several continents, in Finland, in the Netherlands, in Singapore, and just recently we finalized a joint venture with Marathon Petroleum regarding refinery on the west coast of the United States. A few words about our flagship hydrogen project. It's called Project Shark. Here our focus is on building up and investing in green hydrogen production capacity in order for the company to become the most sustainable refinery in Europe by 2030. Green hydrogen will replace conventional natural gas-based grey hydrogen. Currently, the project is in feasibility phase. The project is being implemented in two stages. Firstly, we focus on 120 megawatts electrolyzer capacity, and secondly then increasing and scaling up by 240 megawatts. Our intention is to start up the units in mid-2020s. If you think about the end uses for the hydrogen, Our primary objective is to utilize the green hydrogen for our own refinery processes, and by that creating new sustainable fuels. In addition, we are also demonstrating hydrogen mobility solutions together with our value chain partners. We are very proud that we have received an innovation fund among the first European companies for the large-scale investments. Currently, the grant is under negotiations due to some scope changes due to the geopolitical situation. In addition to Innovation Fund, Neste has also been granted EPCI status, which focuses on cooperation and collaboration across the hydrogen value chain on a pan-European level. Moving then from Finland to Netherlands. At our Rotterdam refinery, we are demonstrating world's highest scale SOEC electrolyzer technology together with our partners. Our partners include the French CEA, Sunfire from Germany, Paul Wurth from Luxembourg, and NG. Currently, basically, the demonstration unit has been installed already, and execution phase is about to be completed, and we start up the unit by the end of Q1 next year. You can see here that the scale is low, but it's important to realize that this is a highly promising technology that it is being developed, and hence the scale is only 2.5 megawatts. With these two selected case examples by Neste, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heidi. That was really useful information. Elna, I have a question for you. So my first question is, what are the Norwegian ambitions and strategy when it comes to developing the national hydrogen value chain?
So Norway has, of course, long been an energy nation with a strong value chain in the hydrogen sector. It's been working with hydrogen for almost a century now, hydrogen production. It has some leading industry and research actors. It really is a key actor for technology, well, a key technology suppliers in hydrogen. It's got companies that are engaged in production, distribution, transport, and storage of hydrogen already, and that's along the entire value chain. So we have big player Nel, for instance, just to name one. And of course, Norway is lucky enough to have some energy abundant natural resources. So on the one hand, you have renewable energy, hydropower, of course. Over 90% of energy consumed in Norway comes from hydropower. And on the other hand, of course, oil and gas. So Norway's strategy really is to focus on the one hand on green hydrogen, of course, produced from electrolysis, but on the other hand on hydrogen produced from steam reforming combined with carbon capture and storage. So Norway is working a lot now to ramp up its infrastructure to capture the carbon emissions from grey hydrogen production, and then being able to store this CO2 in the seabed in old oil wells that are not used anymore. And why is that? Well, simply because Norway believes that green hydrogen won't be enough to reach the climate objectives in the short term, and that we will also need this blue hydrogen in combination with the green hydrogen to reach the objectives, as it will be available in large quantities and quite quickly. Now, what will this hydrogen that will be produced in Norway be used for? So the idea is to use this hydrogen, first of all, to decarbonize the industry. So there's a lot of projects going on, demonstrators and large-scale projects as well, for the hard-to-abate sectors to reduce their carbon emissions. and of course mobility. And when we're talking about mobility, the maritime industry in particular is going to be really important in Norway. Norway is a maritime nation, and it has one of the largest ferry network in Europe. And so it really wants to become a pioneer in terms of maritime hydrogen mobility. So either using hydrogen, decarbonized hydrogen for ferry routes and for medium distances. And then for the long distances, it will be mostly decarbonized ammonia that will be used as a fuel, as a greener and decarbonized fuel for those longer distances. So really the strategy and the idea in Norway is to produce the hydrogen that the country will need, both green and blue. Produce hydrogen for the shipping industry and for the maritime industry, really focusing on that sector. And then developing some demonstrator and pilot projects as well. So that's in the short term. In the longer term, it will be to develop the logistics and a large-scale hydrogen production system.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. My next question is for you, Heidi. You mentioned that you're from Nesti, and Nesti is a member of the Hydrogen Cluster Finland. Could you tell us more about this initiative?
Thank you for the question. Hydrogen Cluster Finland was established in beginning of 2021, and today we're over 70 companies and 6 associations. There is a great variety of companies as members, ranging from large industrial scale companies to utility companies, engineering companies, as well as consultancies. In the cluster, we work based on working groups. There are totally 6 of those. Some of the most important topics are, for instance, regulation. For all of us, when we talk about development of hydrogen economy, it's exceptionally important that there is clear and pragmatic regulation in place. Being here, networking is a key topic for us. We want to closely network globally across Europe and starting from the national boards. Then another topic close to all of us is safety. When we talk about hydrogen, safety is in the very core of what we do. I lead a working group related to projects. In Finland, we have announced close to 20 different hydrogen projects. Those range from smaller scale demonstration to full industrial scale investments. Most of these projects are today still in the engineering and design phase, while also a couple of final investment decisions have been made. This is a short summary of the Hydrogen Cluster Finland activities as of today. Thank you.
Thank you. Elna, you mentioned earlier the Norwegians' ambitions and strategy. Could you tell us more about how far has Norway come to this development?
Norway has started a lot of both pilot and early phase projects, but it's been working as well on more large-scale industrial projects as well. So just to name a few, there's 2 projects that have been selected as part of the important projects of common European interest. So one of them is a project called Barents Blue to produce clean ammonia. And the other one is a project in the metallurgy sector to replace coal with hydrogen in the production of iron and titanium as well. So that's just an example, but of course you have a lot of large Norwegian industries that are engaged in this sort of hydrogen revolution, if I may say. Yara, the fertilizer producer in Norway, is going to be using electrolysis to produce green ammonia and green fertilizers, for instance. Aluminum producer Hydro as well is engaged in a similar kind of project to decarbonize its aluminum production, for one. There's some French-Norwegian projects as well going on, a consortium between Air Liquide, Equinor and BKK that has been created to launch a $1 billion plant to produce liquid hydrogen. So that will be mainly for maritime uses, again, in the south of Norway. Schlumberger, that's invested in Norwegian company Zeg Power, that produces technology for hydrogen, decarbonized hydrogen production. There's some projects in the maritime sector, of course. The idea will be to have some plants to produce decarbonized hydrogen along the entire Norwegian coastline. You know, it's very, very large. So the hydrogen will be produced directly along the coast. The refueling infrastructure will be there as well, of course, so that when all the ferries and hydrogen ships that are being planned are coming into circulation, the infrastructure should be ready. And finally, one last sector I would mention is the coupling between offshore wind and hydrogen, having some hydrogen platforms, some platforms offshore to produce hydrogen with some of the energy produced with the wind, the offshore wind farms, in order to make some savings in the investments needed in developing the power grid. So that's just a few, just to sort of give a brief overview of some of the projects that are going on in Norway today.
Thank you, Elna, for this overview. Talking about projects and examples, Heidi, could you give us some examples of the key enablers for a successful execution of a renewable hydrogen project?
Thank you for the question. First of all, in very pragmatic terms, everything starts from electricity. And when we think about the development of the hydrogen economy, for the investments, it's very, very important that the electricity capacity ramp-up is taking place. So huge amounts of additional wind power capacities, for instance, needed. Not only additional capacity, but also the infrastructure needs to be in place, both for electricity as well as for the hydrogen, when it comes to hydrogen pipelines and hydrogen storages, for instance. Then a critical item in the area of electricity is, of course, cost-competitive price. That is of utmost importance, and we all know where we are going with that today. Then another element I would like to highlight is having sufficient manufacturing capacity available in the area of technologies, for instance, electrolyzers. For us who do the investments, it's very important that there are highly reliable, cost-competitive technologies and electrolyzers available. So capacity ramp-up is needed even in that area. Then let's say, very, very typical discussion topic in the area of hydrogen economy is value chain. So efficient investments require always the right partnerships to be in place, whether it's about electricity sourcing, about R&D, about developing technologies, for instance, and also for having the right demand in place for the end products, just to give you some examples. And then finally, the importance of regulation cannot be overemphasized. As already mentioned in my previous answer, it's very, very important that clear and pragmatic regulation is in place. And in addition, investment subsidies are needed for the investment cases to be realized. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And beyond these regulation, how does Finland contribute to the development of this hydrogen economy?
Finland has several advantages if we think about development of the hydrogen cases. if we think about the electricity portfolio in Finland, we have a clean, robust electricity system, which is a key driver for the implementation and decision making of the investment cases. Also, our electricity price is competitive in relative terms. For the renewable hydrogen cases, clean water is also very important, and we have sufficient amounts of that. Then something I wanted to also emphasize regarding the Finnish landscape, it's about sector integration. In Finland there is a lot of demand for district heating, and we can utilize the excess heat from electrolyzers for the district heating purposes. So this is a key aspect when we think about development of the business cases together with our partners. And in addition, regarding to sector integration, and other sort of example is that we have a very, very developed forest industry, and as part of that, pulp mills generate bio-based CO2. And then when we combine the bio-based CO2 with renewable hydrogen, that opens a fantastic variety of roads moving to synthetic fuels and different PTX solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really enlightening. Thank you. Maybe it's time for a Q&A, don't you think? Do we have any questions for Elna and Heidi? Yes. Let me.
Thank you. My name is Joseph. I would like to know between hydrogen produced by reforming natural gas and hydrogen produced by electrolysis, if we apply carbon capture and storage, which one is more economically feasible? If we improve the efficacy of carbon capture with the hydrogen from natural gas and the one with from water, which one would be economically feasible? And the second question is, you said you mostly store your carbon dioxide under the ocean. Why don't you use it with the surplus hydrogen to produce this synthetic fuel, which would be used in long distance ship than the hydrogen itself because of its complexity in storing? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. So regarding your first question, blue or green hydrogen, I would say actually both are seen as complementary. In the short run, blue hydrogen will be probably a bit more economically viable or available at a larger scale, so it will be easier to produce. But both will be needed. Of course, the privilege to the most important solution for the European Union is the green hydrogen. So that in the long term should be should be the solution on which to focus and on to invest. But the blue hydrogen solution is really sort of in this period of time where we don't have enough green hydrogen production, and we need to reduce our carbon emissions. This is when we're going to use the blue hydrogen solution, so the steam reforming combined with the carbon capture and storage. This is not necessarily designed to be sort of a long-term solutions, because it requires obviously production of gas, natural gas, which is to be phased out at some point. It's not renewable. So it might be economically viable in the short term, sort of to focus on that, to reduce our carbon emissions quickly. But in the longer term, it will be green hydrogen solutions, of course, that will take over and will become, of course, much more economically viable as the scale becomes larger and larger. If you have something to add. Yeah.
Yes, from my perspective, I would like to, first of all, thank you. It's a very topical question. Neste made a decision to discontinue the CCS project. So initially, our Shark project included production of green hydrogen and carbon capture and storage. But due to the geopolitical situation and linkage to natural gas, our investment committee has made a decision that we discontinue the CCS part and greatly ramp up our green hydrogen capacity plans. Thank you.
There was a second question. Sorry.
The second question is to know if you are carrying on with some projects to use the carbon dioxide you are storing in the...
Yeah. Speaking about from the Norwegian perspective, it's not so much carbon capture and usage that's being put forward as the best solution. They're mainly focusing on carbon capture and storage, having the right infrastructure to sort of store the carbon. For the fuel, it's mostly going to be ammonia that will be used, but we're not going to be using the carbon.
Do we have any more questions? More questions? Would you like to add something? Would you like to add something? Sorry. Would you like to add something? Any elements you wanted to mention earlier?
I have a question
left.
I have a question to Elna. You mentioned that you are investigating hydrogen mobility solutions. So, would you be able to elaborate that a bit?
Of course. So for mobility and mobility solutions in Norway, we'll have the mobility solutions on land for one part, mostly for heavy vehicles. So for instance, you have a grocery company, Asko, that's going to be using, it has a project to only use hydrogen-driven trucks. So that's one of the projects going on. And then as I said, the maritime sector will be really one of the main areas in which hydrogen and fuel cells will be used. For smaller vehicles, it's not considered a solution. Same thing for smaller ferries, where we'll be using batteries instead. Norway is one of the countries that has most electric vehicles per inhabitant, and so for that we'll be keeping to batteries for cars actually, but for trucks, for planes as well. Norway is a country that's going to need it needs a lot of planes for small connection between the different cities, given the geography of the country with a lot of fjords and lakes and mountains, etc. And so one of the ideas to decarbonize this flight mobility is to use hydrogen for those smaller planes. That, of course, is not for tomorrow, but research is ongoing to be using fuel cell planes. For trains, I'm not sure there are that many projects. Trains isn't as developed in Norway, and ships, as I was saying as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. Thank you very much. That concludes our presentation. On behalf of BPI France, I really wanted to thank you both for coming all the way from Finland and Norway to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.